Welcome to this week's episode of Courageous Leaders Changing the World. Super excited for this week's guest, Lezly Kaye. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's have a deep conversation straight in then, eh? So the name of the podcast is Courageous Leaders Changing the World. What's been a time that you've had to summon more courage than any other time?
Ooh. Which one? What comes to mind probably is closing and leaving my multimillion-dollar recruitment business because I knew it wasn't aligned anymore. Had a spiritual awakening, basically. There's no other way to put it. I was very closed, cold, unaware, unconscious, and literally just felt like I woke up one day and I was inside of this life that I actually secretly hated. And I want to say it was courageous. It was probably a little bit irresponsible. Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have blown my life up so drastically. But there was a part of me at that point in time where it felt like the only option was to burn everything to the ground so I had capacity to start over. So, yeah, it was my whole life I'd chosen money and success and fame, I guess, in some way, or accolades and titles. And I really wanted to separate myself from that and just choose me for once. And in that, I literally just burnt it all to the ground and went off to the jungle and took some plant medicine for 12 months.
As you do.
As you do.
What was the catalyst for the recognition that, hey, I'm going to shut down a multi-million-dollar business?
It was my second business, and I kept attracting people into the business that, in my view back then, kept fucking me over. What I know now is that I had a deep father wound and I was attracting men that I couldn't trust because I was replaying that story in my mind, but I didn't have that awareness. So, yeah, things were going wrong. You know, my marriage was failing. I was 120 kilos. My business felt really hard. Like I kept losing people, and at that time I was blaming them. And then I sat down one day and I was like, wow, I'm the common denominator here. I'm the one that's in the center of my marriage and my business failures and my team members leaving. So maybe I'm actually the problem. That was a really harsh reality to face, but it was, I think, just even allowing myself to admit that was the catalyst to actually healing and becoming the leader that I am today. But it was a really painful moment in time where I really had to start to strip back all of these identities that I'd built to protect myself.
Mm-hmm. What did you want to protect yourself from the most?
Oh. I want to say not being enough or not being chosen. I think success, well, I know. So I was raised by my grandparents. My mum's a drug addict. My dad's an alcoholic or was an alcoholic. And I was raised by my grandparents when I was 4. And my granddad, God bless him, used to reward me every time I achieved. So it inbuilt this belief or this system that if I was achieving, I would be loved. So, yeah, that really just compounded. I got ducks of the school. I studied journalism at like 17, didn't go to uni, was a high school dropout, but I went straight into real estate and started earning like 6 figures as a 17, 18, 19-year-old. So I really quickly learned that money made people like me. I could buy love with money. Well, you can't, but I thought you could buy love with money.
At that age.
At that age, yes. I can pay for everyone's drinks and holidays and all that sort of stuff. And actually one realization I've had lately, thanks to my beautiful partner, is I learned to trust money over everything else. And that in my eyes, I could make more money so money wouldn't leave, but everyone else left.
Okay, interesting. What's been the deepening into that then?
The complete unraveling in this relationship where he grabbed my face one day and was like, will you trust me more than money, please? It's just been a complete unraveling where I didn't realize how much trust I'd put in money, how much responsibility I'd put in money. Yeah. It's like I mean, I knew that getting into a conscious relationship was going to be the work, but all the work I did before that. No, it's just really interesting to witness the almost like the depth of story and attachment to how I've built safety and how I've had to unwind all of that, as painful as it can be at times. And in a beautiful way in our relationship, we have a very repair is always our goal if we have tension. It's wild actually for me to be in a relationship where, well, it's not, but I was single and celibate for 4 years, and just to be met in such a way where the goal is always love and connection and communication. And it doesn't matter who's in a trigger, whether it's over money or something else, we're always coming back to the same goal. So that's been really healing, but really revealing to all of these wounds that I wasn't even aware was there.
What's the thing that has been revealing the most recently then?
Money. Just my patterns with money. My, I've been, not Miss Independent, because I've definitely made space for a man. That's why he's here. But I've looked after myself for so long. Even in my previous marriage, I was the breadwinner. And of my own accord, I was very unwilling to let a man support me back then. But where there's been an unraveling of me asking him to support me, and how both beautiful and revealing that was for me, because I've never created that much space for a man in my life before.
And what's that opening up for you?
More trust, more like just this realization that I can be loved and held and supported. Less emphasis on, it's really interesting to balance the part of me that has a mission and wants to achieve more things, but also deeply desires to be held and to rest back in his providership. But it's been a beautiful dance, and I'm sure it will continue to unfold to find the balance that feels good in both allowing his providership and still being in my power and in my purpose.
How do you balance those things? It's like you've gone through this entire almost journey of being the overachiever in your life and creating all that success and associating, love with money. How do you untether those things to be able to then create that deepening and opening into a relationship then?
It's more actually what I found more difficult is creating space to be the businesswoman still. Because
most people do that, the big swing of the pendulum all the way, right? Now I'm going to be the overachieving businesswoman. Now I'm going to do
nothing. And that was my journey. I was very much 8-figure businesses, cold, closed, don't give a fuck about anything but money, to a hippie for a minute where I renounced.
For 12 months.
For 12 months. Literally barefoot in the jungle, traveling, doing all the things. And truthfully, I realized you don't really have much impact over here. People can certainly find freedom, but in my opinion, there was a lot of people talking about creating a lot of change, but in the world that we're in, unfortunately, you can't create a lot of change without a lot of resources. So I did pendulum swing back inside of my business, but specifically inside of the relationship, what I've actually had to work with is believing that I get to have both, that I'm allowed to have him love me and support me and still make money. And that's probably been the recalibration in my nervous system, is I don't have to choose and he's not going to ask me to choose. And it's funny because I think we were like 4 weeks in and he loves my boss babe. He loves every part of me. And he made a joke in a good way. It wasn't even a passive aggressive joke. It was something about he was celebrating my boss babe in some way, and I had a full trigger. And I said, if this business build is going to cost me our intimacy and our connection, I won't do it. And so that's when I realized that, I just have this belief that I can't have both. And there's a fear that I'm in witnessing at the moment where I'm learning that I can have both, and he's helping me inside of our relationship do that. But yeah, I would probably say that's the biggest thing is I don't have to choose, and there is space for both, and he gets to love both, and I get to be supported in that. So yeah, that's been the biggest.
What would you say to someone who's opening into that? You know, so many people live that one-dimensional life. It's like all either like parenting, there's like nothing else, or it's all business and there's nothing else. How do you allow someone to open into understanding and getting that it's possible to be able to, you know, have all areas of life?
Oh, I think it's a choice that we make. Honestly, I think it's avoidance. I think it's a lot easier to take one identity and just be good at that identity and then say, well, I don't have time for anything else. I have very interesting views on being a mum. I do say life hack, get divorced, because I only have my son 50% of the time, and I'm sure that helps. And my ex-husband and I are great friends, so I'm sure that helps. I know not everyone has that that ecosystem available to them. But I don't know, I've always had this view that you get to have whatever you want. You just have to choose to want it and be willing to do the work to have it.
Yeah.
So I could quite easily be like, well, I'm a kept woman now. I'm not going to sort out my money and love issues. I'm just going to put all the pressure on him and make him earn more money to sustain our lifestyle. Who would that serve? Nobody. Certainly not our relationship, because we would lose intimacy because you'd be under too much pressure. And same with parenting. Like, we co-parent. We have a week where it's just us, and a week where we have both of our children, because I've got a son and he's got a daughter. And it's been interesting to navigate that, because we're both learning to be co-parents, learning to be step-parents, learning to love each other's children, learning to integrate the other co-parents, and only one of them is cooperative. But again, we could choose to be like, well, we're going to have this portion and not this portion. And it would probably be easier. We could compartmentalize our life in that way, but it's not true to what we both want. And I think, to almost rewind your question, when we first got together in like week 3, we literally got out a whiteboard and we were like, these are our values. This is where we're going. And this is how we're going to make it work together. And I think we call it ground zero. We always come back to who is it that we are as individuals? What do we want as a couple? And where are we going collectively and individually? If I was to just be a stay-at-home mum and be like, cool, I'm giving up and I'm not going to contribute to everything else we have, in my opinion, I'm not contributing to it's almost like I'm breaking my promise. Like, I sat down with him and I'm like, this is where we're going. We both made agreements in a sense. I think people can, and I have been victim to this in the past, it's like it's easier for me to not look at all the ways in which I'm using an identity to hide from the work that I need to do. So, well, my identity is a mum, so I don't need to look at the fact that I can't have a business, or my identity is a business, which was me, and I'm not going to look at the fact that I can't be a mum. So before I was conscious, I took my son to daycare at 6 weeks old. So there was things that I sacrificed back then to get to where I am today. But if I had have had the consciousness or lens or awareness that I had now, I would have had both. And it's ultimately why I quit my job. And, you know, I was earning $700K as an employee, but they started to tell me too much about what I could and couldn't do with my life, and especially mothering. So I quit and I started a business because I was like, well, I'm going to do this on my terms and I can have both. So the weeks I have my son, I don't do anything outside of school hours. I drop him off to school, I pick him up, and I'm a businesswoman for 4 hours, and then I'm mum. And then I cook dinner because I'm also a devotional partner.
Love it. Yeah, it's interesting to be able to see people's journey with it. As I said, they go from that like one-dimensional approach to it, and really that's an avoidance strategy to be able to avoid certain areas. But then also, like, some people fall into the pattern of like using, you know, they want to create growth in just one area of their life as well. It's like they're not taking the reflections, they're not taking the lessons from their relationship that is actually going to help them integrate and actually show up in business differently, because they're just like, oh no, it's a season of business.
Everything touches everything. And I know people say that often, but it's so true.
Yeah.
Your business is your relationship with yourself and other. And if you're trying to compartmentalize it, it's probably why none of it's working.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And that's like one of the things that I like to talk about the most is like, how do we create a life which is a holistic life where we can actually, have our spiritual, our business, our family, and all of it actually come together so that we can actually start to, live a multi-dimensional life rather than an insular, myopic life, which, looks good on the outside but feels shit on the inside.
So true. And I lived that. I was businesswoman, Instagram, private jets, Range Rovers. I had the appearance and I literally was like miserable, clothes. And I was probably numb actually. I didn't even realize I was miserable. The awareness I have now is I was miserable, but back then I would have just said I never felt fulfilled and I felt numb. And I probably even wouldn't have had the language of numb. I just would have said that I never really felt joy. And I was waiting to hit the next milestone in business or the next something to feel whatever it is I thought I was going to feel at the top of this mountain that I was climbing. But there was always a new peak. Every peak there was to climb, there was another one on the other side.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. It's interesting. That's rings true for so many people. They go through the experience of, not feeling joy, then they start to feel joy, and then the new level of work becomes all the areas where they're like foreboding joy, where they get to a certain level of joy and then they shut down again and they have to expand their capacity to be able to receive more in relationship, receive more money, receive more in every area. What's been your journey with that, with kind of foreboding joy?
Yeah, as you were saying that, I'd probably say I'm at a peak at the not a peak. I'm at maybe there's a new mountain to climb. Yeah, I feel like my biggest work at the moment is letting myself have it all, and that next, I get to have joy in my relationship and joy in my business. Yeah, I feel where I can be restrictive and where I'm like living old patterns of I can't have both. And I know it consciously. I can have this conversation with you, but I fear the work I've been doing is somatically and in my subconscious, because my conscious mind and what's showing up in my reality are two different things. And I have the awareness that there's clearly a belief system playing out. And I would say because my past relationship for 10 years, it was business over love and connection and intimacy. So I know I'm choosing different because our relationship is strong. We have connection nights 3 nights a week. We constantly communicate about intimacy, and not just sex. I mean like actual emotional intimacy, safety, all of those things. And that's prioritized. So I know I'm not losing it. In fact, our relationship is at the heart of our business and our family. And that was the ground zero that we put in place. And I would say business has slowed, it has slowed. And I feel a lot of that is because there's still a part of me that's unsure that I get to have both. And that's the work that I'm deep in now. And it's been really interesting just to witness those belief systems play out.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I was reflecting on this over the weekend. It comes back to the quote, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And I was thinking about that in like relationship, because me and Jackie, my partner, had, big conversations on Friday about, working more as a team in kind of all the areas where we're not doing that. We're not doing that either in relationship or business. There's an interesting dynamic where when you're, parenting in a relationship and in business together, adds an extra dimension to it. And yeah, you can definitely grow much faster, but you don't feel any of the growth when you don't actually do it in a holistic way, and it doesn't actually create any level of sustainability. And, I've done that many times in business where it's been fast and fun, but unfelt.
I think, in my experience, finding the balance feels like a forever relationship with yourself. And some seasons do call on different things, but I feel for me it's been removing the parts of me that still believe I have to sacrifice something. Time, quality, feeling, joy. Yeah, it's wild to just keep deepening into finding out what's possible and really discovering what's true for you in the now moment versus maybe what was true last week or last year.
How is that different to like there's the personal development concept, which is, you'll have pain now, you'll have pain later.
Don't avoid anything. I think when you say that, what I feel is it's only ever going to be painful if you're avoiding something. Like have the hard conversations in the moment. Speak your truth in the moment. Yeah, I feel there's so much that happens where we wait for the right time, and sometimes there's never a right time. It's kind of just, I don't know, almost being in the messiness of I don't fully know the steps to get there, but I know where I want to go. Yeah, I think the only thing I feel that can turn into pain is avoidance of something, of avoiding the conversation that maybe you miss your partner. Maybe you feel that, my partner's just taken on a second business. I've got 2 businesses. We've got 2 kids. In that, we had like really big conversations around how we keep our relationship a priority. And he said, I need you to help me prioritize it because I know I will slip into being on purpose. Now, if we were to listen to polarity rules, he's meant to lead. But we're on the same team. Yeah. So he is aware that I would love him to lead, and often he does, but women are love-led and men are purpose-driven. So he has asked me to remind him to prioritize us. And not that I ever don't feel like he does still prioritize me, but it's like those moments where it's like, what am I trying to communicate here? He knows where his downfalls can be, and he's asking me to keep him in check because he doesn't want his hyper focus to derail the foundations that we've built. So I think he could have very well avoided that. He could have very well gone, well, I'm taking on this extra responsibility. I know Lezley's still going to fucking want 3 nights of my week and all of this time and attention. But he could have very well gone, well, I'm just going to pretend that's not happening and just take on this. And then when I forget or when I drop the ball or when I make her feel dropped, she can come to me and fix it then. But rather than do that, rather than avoid that difficult conversation, he's gone, babe, this is happening and I know myself and it's not going to be my intention. But if I get hyper-focused on building these businesses, I need you to keep me in check because I don't want you to feel that you're not important, but sometimes I need you to help me too. It'd be similar to me avoiding asking more of his time or asking more of his presence because I think we can get caught up in almost not wanting to burden the other party, and that festers and stews. And specifically in relationship, if I stay silent because I'm feeling neglected and he stays silent because he feels shame and guilt because he knows that he's going to drop the ball, then we actually build more resentment and disconnection. Whereas if both of us aren't avoiding those difficult conversations and we're saying, well, we're really fucking busy, we have 2 businesses each, we have children, but we need to make sure we always keep coming back to the same team and there's no avoidance of the moments where both of us are probably going to get it wrong, then I think it becomes a lot easier to navigate once you move through the messier conversations or sometimes the more challenging conversations.
How does someone start to develop that level of self-awareness to be able to recognize what your pattern is and then actually also follow through with the capacity to actually say, this is my tendency, this is what I normally do. Can you support me on that? Because it takes a lot of self-awareness to be able to do that, and then also courage and vulnerability to be able to then create that agreement with someone. How does someone get to that level of self-awareness?
Ooh, love this. Go take plant medicine? No. Don't. That wasn't a recommendation. No. In our relationship, so we do our practice 3 nights a week it's an I see, I feel practice. We're not allowed to communicate out of the terminology I see, I feel. So it might be, I say to him, I see that you're carrying a lot. And he might then say, I feel like I'm dropping the ball. And we create this space, it's literally only 20 minutes, 3 nights a week, where in this practice, he actually has an opportunity to get vulnerable, which actually keeps polarity for the rest of the relationship. So it's almost like containment. It's not almost, it is like containment for his emotions. So he has space to feel into where he hasn't felt like he has kept his agreements or arrangements. And I'm not judging him in that moment. I'm just seeing what he's feeling and creating space for him to feel it, basically. And then we swap, and then he will see me and I will feel. And then so I might say things like, I feel I'm trying to get you a real feel. Like, I feel that I would love more space for us to connect. The key is not to be projecting or I never bring my venom or bitterness to those. Anything that I need to work through first, for both of us we do. And then in these conversations, it's just letting each other be seen and felt, and the vulnerability of what's actually alive for us, especially as the pressure builds and the businesses grow. The self-awareness part actually comes inside of that, because in what I've reflected in him is because he's so focused, it's like he doesn't let himself feel the disappointment until there's space made for it. And not that he needs to feel the disappointment, but in what I've witnessed, when he realizes that he's fucked up, he wants to change it. But oftentimes he doesn't realize that he's fucked up until we've created the space for him to realize that he's fucked up, because he's so focused on what else he's doing. And he actually self-corrects. 9 times out of 10, I don't have to do anything, but because we have these practices in place, it gives him the space to actually see, to zoom out again. Because generally when he's business and then me and then his kid, but he's normally here and we're in the peripheral. So when we create space for him to actually see me and see what I'm feeling and see what I need, it becomes more ingrained in his purpose. And so he creates more space for it. The awareness part, so back to we've both done the work individually and continue to do the work, like NLP, hypnotherapy, all of the coaching containers there is. We were here for coaching. So I think not constantly healing, it's constantly like being in places that are going to make you more aware and going to help give you that reflection, in my opinion. And even in relationship, you can't really see things you're that close to, especially yourself. And I love his reflection, and similar, he loves my reflection of him. And there is that trust, that we just trust what each other see in each other. But the practice helps, because communication, in my opinion, is one of the biggest things that couples get wrong. The way we communicate our pain, the way we communicate our reflections, rather than you can't say to a man what they're doing wrong. You just can't. You can't nag them. You have to learn to communicate in a way that doesn't bring shame or guilt. Because the second that shame enters the room, men shut down, in my opinion and in my reflection. So learning to communicate in a way that's not like venomous, not full of your own pain, not full of projection, really helps to bring awareness. Because I would hazard a guess that most men are actually more aware than they think they are, but they fear it's not the punishment, it's like, the shame that they're going to feel. And if you don't, as a woman, don't know how to hold your man's shame or hold his softness, and men are allowed to be soft. It's kind of the point. We're both masculine and feminine. Then there's not really much space for that self-reflection. To get there, you need to have tools. If you want to get there in a couple, you need to have practices that are going to help you communicate in a way that feels more like love than it does venom. Yeah, and you have to be willing to keep meeting each other in, I don't know, it's like me and Lucky never actually fight. We have tension, we have triggers, but we literally sit down after it and we're like, okay, so this is what I could have done better and this is what I could have done better, and wow, this is a pattern that I see playing out and I'm going to have to do some work on that. And I think this like same team, I'm not trying to make it his fault. He's not trying to make it my fault. I'm not trying to say this is your wound. He's not trying to say this is my wound. We're really only interested in the truth, and we're willing to sift through both of our patterns and belief systems to find truth, whatever that might be.
Yeah, cool. How do you find that collective truth then beyond that?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if there is a perfect formula for that. I want to say what feels the most like love. How willing are you to lose it? I think for me, that's a key indicator as to whether I'm coming from attachment and a wound versus the desire for truth. I think one of my biggest strengths is because, and the biggest strengths in our relationship is actually being willing to lose it if it's not in truth. It's not to say that I want to at all, but there's this like, I don't know, this stronger trust, I guess, that if it's true and if it's built on the right foundations, like my ultimate truth's not going to hurt it. And same for him, and creating that space for him and making sure there's safety for that for him too.
How do you create more safety in that then?
For a man, it's creating space for their emotions, in my opinion. And I've witnessed a lot of relationships, my own, my clients. I've witnessed my partner transform. And we've had he wasn't, maybe we'll get him on next time so he can speak for himself, but he wasn't the man he is in our relationship, in his past relationship. And we've had so many conversations about almost how surreal it has felt to witness his own evolution because of, I don't know, the shared desire for evolution and honestly capacity to communicate in a way that feels safe, because he can come to me with his shame and his guilt or his fears or his pain, and no part of me shuts down. No part of me is like, oh, tears aren't masculine, or I can't hold you in this, or we create a container, we create the safety. He's not running around, and again, men can cry, but he's not running around every day having a breakdown. If he needs to express in that way, we have a container for it. So he feels safe to be his full self. And again, 9 times out of 10, when he has space for that, he autocorrects. He feels what he needs to feel. He takes the lessons from it. He feels loved and supported and not emasculated, and he actually becomes more masculine. Not that that's a goal, but it allows him to like self-resource more strength and self-resource more direction and purpose.
Mm-hmm. So that was mostly about the masculine. What about the feminine then?
As specifically, what do you want me to answer?
So that was like, how does the masculine start to create a deeper sense of safety? What about for the feminine?
Oh, yeah. I feel the biggest thing, and this me from experience, that we get wrong as women is making men hold all of us without being willing to hold ourselves. So when I first started doing the work, before I left my ex-husband, I started to learn about masculine, feminine, polarity and emotions, because I never felt emotions actually for most of my life until 7 years ago. And I expected him to be able to just actually truthfully save me. But I wasn't willing to save myself. I wasn't willing to do the work myself. I wasn't willing to hold myself in my emotion. I wasn't willing to learn how to love myself. I wasn't willing to do anything, actually. I was like, well, now I know I need to feel, and now I know you need to hold space for me, so hold space for me. How could I have expected him? And I did, but with the realization I have now, it was very unfair of me to ask him to hold me when I wasn't willing to hold myself. It was unfair of me to ask him to hold the emotions inside of me, but that I wasn't willing to hold myself. I do think there's a lot of repair that comes in relationship. But if I have a really big emotion, before I take it to my partner, I sit in it with myself. I sift through my chaos and I find the truth, because there's often, and I have big T trauma in my childhood, so there's often a lot of noise and story and things I'm trying to make real, which I have enough capacity to titrate, so be in the now and be in that experience to know that some of it's true and some of it's not. So for women, honestly, learn how to touch the depth of your pain and not need him to hold you in it. Now, my partner has held me in it, but I asked him to, and I only asked him to after I'd held myself in it. And I think when you can self-source safety, it's a different, in my opinion, I'm not a man, but it's a different feeling for the man to hold you, because they're not rescuing you. They're creating a container to probably heal it in a different way, because it is really healing to have someone you love hold you in your deepest pain. But I think the biggest thing we do wrong is like feel all of this emotion as women and chaos and then be like, well, now it's yours. Fix me, hold it. You're not man enough if you don't hold me in it. Because if you can't be with that part of you yourself, then you're asking to be rescued.
Mm. How do you recognize the distinction between those places when you're in it then?
Some of my biggest work in this relationship is, and we went from 24 hours, we're probably down to 2 hours now, is the parts of me that want to isolate when I'm in big emotion. So I witnessed when we got in this relationship that anytime I felt big emotion, I would want to push him away and shut down and actually disconnect from feeling the emotion. And it would generally take me 24 hours to reconnect, or actually allow him, for those that like allow him back into, if people don't understand energetic fields, it's like.
Just hit him. Just hit him with it.
Yeah. So like, I think most people understand this. It's like you can feel when your heart's opened or heart's closed. That's probably the easiest way. And for 24 hours after an argument before, my heart would be closed. I would be like, fuck you, you ain't getting in here, because I would make the pain his problem, or his, like he didn't fix it good enough. And I wouldn't outwardly feel that, but I could feel the closure and the disconnection. And I would go sulk in my room like a child. Like honestly, I would. It's like if I'm in a trigger, it's my teen really. It's not even my little girl. It's my 13-year-old self that wants to be like, fuck you, get away from me, slam the door, go lock myself in my room. So witnessing behaviors like that, because if love is the goal, then connection's the goal. Because most times you actually want connection, and most times you tend to get in my view, and in what happens to me is I get triggered if I'm not feeling like I'm receiving love or connection. So I started to realize that would be in a trigger, would have a conversation, but then I would withdraw, which was the complete opposite to what I actually wanted. And then I realized the reason I was in the trigger in the first place was because I was feeling like I wasn't getting my needs met, which was generally around love or connection. So witnessing that sort of behavior where, yeah, if there's any isolation, removal, and sometimes you need space, but space is different to withdrawing love to punish someone. Very different. How did I witness that? Honestly, I just anchor back to what do I really want here? And I would ask if I'm in a trigger, once I've moved through the big emotion, I'd close my eyes and I sit there and I would just ask myself, what do I want? Like, what do you actually want? And the answer would always be the same. I want connection. I want love. And then so I would, like, honestly, I felt like negotiating with a terrorist sometimes. Like, have you ever tried to negotiate with a toddler? It's like that literally happening inside of my mind. And I would have to like talk this part of me that's playing out old patterns and belief systems and traumatic responses, truthfully, to teach it that it was safe to actually come back into connection after disconnection, and that I had to make it realize that that's actually what I wanted and why I was mad in the first place. How to guide someone to do that? Honestly, just have feel your anger, yes. And sometimes I'll take myself away from my partner and I'll go into our room and I'll put on some music and I'll have a tantrum. I'll hit some pillows. I'll scream into a pillow. I'll cry. I'll get out that chaos, anger, pain, whatever it is, because once I've let that express itself, I have more capacity to come back into truth. But it can be difficult because I know from experience the stories that want to run and the patterns that want to run and the belief systems that are playing out. So I'd always say learn to communicate with him. Like I had to say, like, he thought I wanted space when I did that. And when I was out of the trigger, I actually had to be like, hey, I'm pretty confident I want you to come and get me. Because he was scared, like I'm like shut down. I'm like, oh, there's a part of me that needs you to come and help bring me back from that place. So, yeah, I think also communicating once you're out of the trigger what you need next time. And that's what we would do. We would wait till the trigger was over, have a conversation, try new tactics. And now it's wild, but like the window of disconnect is 1 to 2 hours now versus 24 hours. And for both of us, because his pattern was avoidance as well. But for both of us now, we give it space we let those parts of us feel what they need to feel, and then we come back into connection. And just conversations, communication, love is really all we anchor to.
Yeah, I love that. There was like this, I think it was this guy that like asked the Buddha one time, he's like, so, what do you do with your triggers? It's like, how do you get to the place where there's no more triggers? And the Buddha says, I still get triggered. It's just that you never see it because it just becomes alchemized so quickly. To you, it just looks like a blink. And that's part of the journey of awareness is how do we shorten that time frame? How do we take it from 24 hours to 12 hours to 6 to 5 to get it smaller and smaller and smaller? And I think that's the journey that most people kind of judge themselves for the most. It's like when they have an experience where they fall back into a pattern and it becomes 6 hours again, and then they get into the shame spiral in each of those pieces. And I loved the distinctions that you kind of highlighted there around the importance of like coming back to yourself, like reparenting yourself to be able to get to that place, because often you fall into that wanting to be saved, wanting to be fixed, all of those pieces. And, it's just part of that. It's almost like that grasping energy to be able to like, the person that's kind of grasping, trying to swim, but like pulls the other person under. Definitely see that play out in a relationship a lot.
And we're by no means perfect. I just want to say that. We're not. I think one thing is you were saying that the reparenting, huge. All I'm doing is reparenting myself, not expecting him to, but not afraid to let him see that part of me. So I think the biggest healing was like, oh, this part of me wants you to rescue it. And not being afraid, and him also not being afraid to get it wrong with me. And I think that's the safety in the communication and no shame, because he could have come and so the next time it happened, he came and at first I tried to resist it. As in I'd literally asked him to come next time I was in it. And then when he came, I was like, oh, I don't want you here. But he stayed in that. So it's really just figuring out, what is that child in you? Because let's be honest, we're all like either 4 or 7 just running around in adult bodies. What need is that part of you trying to get met? So I think that's, and give each other grace. I think a lot of couples, people in general actually, have such high expectations of perfectionism so soon. And when you kind of put that aside and are like, oh, we're going to get it wrong and that's okay because we are on the same team here, it makes it a lot easier to fail forward together and to get it wrong together and to find the way through together. We're not keeping score, or I'm not sitting here being like, oh, you really dropped polarity and you weren't really masculine this week and I'm going to hold this against you. We're literally like, what does the moment need and what does love need and what do we need both individually and collectively to make it through this and find our way back to love.
How do we then go beyond like taking it personally then? Because a lot of what you've communicated about is like it's creating, I take it back to like the most basic essence, which is like it's just feedback loops. It's creating feedback loops. You know, how in the work that we do, it's all about flow. And if you don't have a feedback loop, you don't recognize where you are, you can't actually evolve it, you can't actually create that awareness. So if I'm looking at my Instagram, I instantaneously have a feedback loop.
Yes.
Most people don't create feedback loops. That's why they just get so far down the track that they don't recognize that they're off course until they're way off course. And, you know, in relationship, it's creating that feedback loop. It's creating that capacity to be able to, you know, create the container so that you can have the conversation, but also then like receiving the feedback. And I think, you know, that's like the next piece is like, how do you get to that place where you receive the feedback without taking it personally, without going into defensiveness, without going into your pattern, without going into each of those things? That's
the individual work. You know, it's why my partner is doing NLP next month. It's why I constantly have mentors and teachers, and why he does as well. There is a lot you have to do in relationship, in my opinion, but if you don't have the outside reflection and the self-evolution, you will take it personally. In my opinion, it's a choice. Same as my story where we started this, I could have stayed on this path and kept making millions of dollars and kept ignoring the feedback loops that I was the problem, but my quality of life sucked. I didn't know joy, I didn't know pleasure, I didn't truly actually know love because I wouldn't allow myself to be loved. My ex-husband was a beautiful man, but how could I allow him to love me when I didn't actually love myself? So I think there's no magic pill for that. You have to be willing to face yourself. And I actually think our relationship works so beautifully because we're both hungry for self-reflection. You can create safety for each other. And again, you know, if perhaps you're the more self-aware partner, without making it a competition or without taking score, you can create space and safety for other people to have some level of awareness, but there becomes a point where you stop supporting them and start parenting them if they're not willing to do the work. And they might be the conversations that you have to have and probably even have with yourself first. Yeah, I think both parties, if we're talking about relationships, just have to be willing to have themselves reflected back to themselves. And I think that is the biggest catalyst as to why our relationship works so well, especially given that we're in business together and parenting and all the things, is because when we're in reflection, as painful as it might be, we both actually crave it. Like, what's the word? Is it like, it's not sadistic, but something like that. Like it's like, but yeah, like I kind of like to see where I'm going wrong. If he has reflection for me, or I see reflection in the way I'm behaving in our relationship, I don't know, it sounds wanky, but I love myself so much that I'm willing to look past the pain of the initial shame or guilt, or because I want what's best for me. What's best for me is not hiding in my shadows. It's not evolving. You know, I have coaches and the reason I do and the reason I ask them to be so direct with me is because if I keep hiding in those patterns, they'll remain patterns. So yeah, there's no magic answer for that. It's literally, are you willing to do what it takes to become the best version of yourself? Most people give up because it can be relentless. Most people give up because it's painful. Like for me, when I closed my companies, the identity death, the ego deaths that I had to face, the dark nights of the soul, the recalibration of my whole world, so many times I wanted to give up and not even just stop. Like There were times where I wanted to leave this planet because I was like, I don't know if I can keep learning these lessons, evolving in this way. There was moments where it felt relentless. And it's also the best thing. I don't know, it's so rewarding to feel like you're constantly in. Part of me was going to say becoming better, but I think it's becoming more of who you are. I think it's this understanding what you're capable of and really becoming limitless in what's possible in this lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So there's like this journey that so many people go on that like when they're creating that feedback, often it starts out with, getting external support with it, which is, hiring a coach, and then you want to create feedback there. You want to create feedback with yourself. You want to be able to create feedback in your relationship. How do you recognize when that's become a mechanism to kind of perpetuate the same thing playing out, outsourcing your power to your coach, outsourcing your power to not being good enough or not getting it right, or perfectionism, or to your partner? How do you get to that point of that recognition where, I just call it like spiritual bypassing, where you recognize you're using the spiritual thing that you've learned that's also got you to where you are, has also just become another form of coping mechanism to be able to avoid going deeper?
Yeah, I feel this, and I've been here too myself. Things should change. The timeline can be difficult, but if you're in the same patterns probably 12 months later, you've got a problem. The same things are appearing. They can appear in different ways, and it can also not be that black and white. If you feel like you need someone versus choose someone, I would say that's a good indicator. If it's like, I can't make this decision without my business coach. If your coach is actually building that codependency, that's probably a problem. And if you've got an identity of healing, like if you've got an identity of doing the work, if you've got an identity of almost also that you're better than people because of the amount of work that you do, that was my indicator. That was my red flag. I was like, wow, I dissolved my ego and then I got a spiritual ego. This is fun. For me, that's probably the indicators. If there's any form of better than or hierarchy, you've built yourself another prison. Yeah, if there's any pedestaling of coaches or mentors or incapacity to make your own decisions. And if you have to be in the work or the evolution, I think it's interesting. I've only ever had short periods of time without a coach. Part of me does wonder if it's because I actually don't feel like I need one. I'm in a relationship. There's enough coming at me, but I sit in question with it a lot. The part of me that can trust that I'm going to evolve and grow without it. Yeah. But they would be my pointers is if you've started to realize you've outsourced your power, if you need your coach to answer all your questions for you. For me, I get coaches to help me see my blind spots in business. It's why I coach. We can't always see what's in front of us because we're too much in it. But if it becomes less about, business growth or strategy and personal growth and more a need to have them, then there's potentially some codependency or some identity around being in the work. I think when I was studying Tantra, there was a lot of identity around being in that space and having these mentors. And I still have them, but it has less weight on my life right now. There's less of an identity around that whole narrative. And potentially almost having an identity around anything can become the loop that we hide in. Like the identity of a business coach, the identity of being a partner? Like similar to relating it to people hiding in one identity, where do we then use the identity of evolution? So yeah, there's some ways, and I probably need some myself. Like maybe I just go fire all my coaches.
Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely see it play out when, people go through each of those pieces. The neediness with the coach is definitely one on the forefront. If you need your coach to be able to make any decision, it's like, well, then it's no longer your decision.
Truly.
And yeah, you see, there's different groups of people that do personal development. There's people that do personal development that just, they have the identity of I'm in the work and that being perpetuated. And although, I do see everything is a perfect system and everything is working out for people's highest intentions. And I think it also becomes important for people to be able to take that highest level of responsibility, to be able to recognize as the coach, as the person, the highest level of awareness to actually shift out of that. Because it's great to, still get paid money from people, but it's also better for them to actually grow.
I think, and I do this probably because I've been aware of it in my relationships in the past, where I set that from the beginning, in that like my boundary is I'm not going to make decisions for you, and my intention is by the end of this 12 months that you actually learn how to make them within yourself, because in my opinion that's the point. Yeah.
What do you think is, something that the industry can evolve as a whole then?
I don't know, honestly. People bag out the industry so often, but
there it is. That's what we can evolve as the whole, is bagging out people.
Yeah, literally. I'm like, anything I'm going to say is going to project my own personal belief systems anyway. It actually has nothing to do with the industry and everything to do with a wound that I probably have. I'll probably put the responsibility back on those choosing the people that they work with. Don't ask the industry to change. How about we all just learn how to make, and maybe that's why they're getting a coach in the first place, but if you learn to self-source and make decisions, then you're going to stop making it someone else's fault or problem that you made the wrong decision in the first place. Like I've paid out coaches that I stopped working with because that was my choice. I had the bad judge of character, or I didn't realize that XYZ was playing out, versus, let's make it all their fault and about them. And so I think what could change is the way we relate collectively, and that you don't need to hate someone or blame someone, or it doesn't need to be someone's fault. My biggest thing with society is a lot of people can't hold two truths at the same time. Like my truth and your truth can't coexist, and if you're right, then I'm wrong.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you can be right and I can be right, and that's so okay. And I think if that could shift, it's a bigger conversation and question in the industry, but there would be a lot more space for nuance and a lot more space for, less lack of, less blame, less this was your fault, it's your problem, you didn't do X, Y, and Z. On both sides, I think there can be a lot of deflection from leaders, coaches, a lot of lack of self-responsibility, and there's that on the flip side too. So, yeah, I would say collectively, if everyone could have more self-responsibility and more self-awareness, we would be a much more, I don't know, not even joyful, just things would be more right in the world.
I was going to say harmonious.
Thank you.
Yes,
yeah,
that's
there would be
like
so much harmony. There would be so much more harmony.
Yeah, cool. I think that's the perfect thing to wrap up on. What's the best way for people to be able to find you?
Instagram @Lezly Kaye. Check the show notes because I like to spell my name differently.
Love it. That was fun.
Thank you.